Is this thing working? Are we live? I got stuff on my face. Wow, look at that. Already kicking off to a great start. What's happening, everybody? I hope everybody's having a fantastic whatever day you're watching this. Didn't realize I was coming into this party with a bunch of grease on my face. Well, it lets you know what I'm up to this evening. I am in the process still onboarding the GSXR 600, getting her all ready to go. And in this case, I just got through wrapping up hopefully I didn't wrap it up with this big grease thing on my face, a video going over things that you're going to want to do, things that you're going to need to do when you're onboarding a new motorcycle. It's also kind of best practices for what I would consider to be like a season starter or season ender, however you want to look at it. Going over the bike, checking things, making sure that everything is as it should be. And that's basically what I'm doing right now with this thing. It's freezing cold outside. It's raining icebergs outside, it feels like anyway. So while we are waiting for Mother Nature to get over her little temper tantrum, we're going to be working on this thing and getting her ready for hopefully next week, where we can get her out, get her on the road, and really start to exercise this motorcycle. Although I have already had this bike out once, and it is a strong, and I mean a real strong version of a GSXR 600, stronger than I actually thought. DM is in. What is up, my friends? Got the ball guy with the flex and the specs. Show contributor extraordinaire, DM. Got us our first tank of gasoline with the GSXR 600. So what I'm up to tonight, guys, is, well, hold on. The way I've got the camera set up, it's actually on my laptop this time. So let me tell you what I'm doing right now. I just got through wrapping up kind of an onboarding procedure with the bike. Basically just going over, make sure the brakes are good, make sure your fluids are good, right? Well, it's, look, not all of them can be home runs. And these types of videos, a lot of times, they're there more or less as a, how do I put this? They're there to remind myself in many cases, as much as to the general audience, hey, don't forget to do this with your bike. What I'm doing right now is something that most guys really would never do, nor would you probably ever want to. But I'm in the process of doing a how do I put this? Basically, I'm pulling like the tank off to make sure that everything is going to come off as it should. I'm also checking routing of various sensor wires, vent hoses, things like that, to make sure that they are in good shape. So what I'll do is I will disconnect the fuel line from the tank and then reconnect it, making sure that there aren't any dried out seals or anything like that, making sure that there's nothing weird going on. And then I'll prime the bike and fire it up. I've already done that. Everything checked out just fine. The other thing is that I will pull, I don't know if you can see them right about there, right on the other side of that mirror. Oh, wait, no, they're right there. The little vent hoses. What I'll do is I will lube those up, and with a trim tool, I'll just pop those off of the tank and lube those up and reinstall them. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm getting the bike put together so that when it's time to disassemble it, it's already been disassembled and it's real easy to just pull everything off the bike. And I know that there aren't going to be any surprises. One thing, if you've got a used motorcycle in your sights, this is going to be what you're going to have to do with it. Whether it's one of those things where it's almost whether you are planning on it or not, you're going to end up doing this at some point if you're doing your own work on the bike. And because this bike had sat for so very long, and because the top end had to come off of this bike has been pulled apart pretty significantly at some point in its life, and had to have a valve cleaning and get all the ethanol crust and everything else off of this bike. Because of that, when the bike went back together, a lot of times, and look, I'm not blaming a mechanic for any of this, because routing and things like that, this can happen, especially if you're not familiar with a bike. But what I'm also doing is I'm rerouting some sensor wires to get them out of the way of either clutch linkage, shifter linkage. This is primarily for the kickstand safety switch, I'm checking to make sure everything is routed as it should be. And if it's not, like with vacuum lines going in the wrong spot, I'm trying to move those around, assuming that they haven't been chewed up by the chain already. But they're just vents, and so I'm not really overly concerned about it. But there's goofy little things that you're going to have to do with the bike, because God only knows who worked on what. People do a lot of their own work. They don't pay attention to how things come apart. Then they put it back together the way that they think it should go back together. And that's usually not how it goes together. So anyway, I've gone ahead and wrapped that up on this bike too. And just basically giving it a solid once over. And I got to say, there's not a lot of anything that I'm too worried about with this bike. I mean, it runs amazingly well. Everything that I've touched on the bike has checked out to be good. So next step is just to start having fun with it. And I will say this, one of the fun things about having a GSXR 600 in the fleet is that you really do forget how much fun these bikes are. And one of the things I'm going to be talking about in an upcoming video, whenever the weather clears up and I can actually get this video knocked out, is you forget how fun 600s are, because you end up graduating up and out of what you think you're graduating out of anyway, the 600 class and the power and all of that. But what you find out is you never really did graduate out of a 600. You just got into, say, a 650 or 1,000, or maybe you got like a Testastrada level of Ducati, like the L twin Ducatis or whatever. You start getting out of the 600s and into those kind of bikes, and now you're kind of out of a very familiar pond, and you're starting to like branch out and try other bikes. What's funny is that after riding all of those different bikes, and after riding a GSXR 1000, CBR 1000, the R1, after being exposed to all of that stuff and getting really good with leader bikes, at least for what I do anyway, it's serviceable in terms of skill set. Let's leave it at that. But really good at being familiar with a lot of other bikes, though. You get on one of these 600s and it kind of clicks. It's like, man, this thing is a lot better than I remember it. And it's crazy because, I spend all this time on the 750s, and there's not a lot that separates the 750 from the GSXR 600. And at least in terms of feel. Now, I'm not going to say that if you line the two up, the 7 probably going to check out of the 600's life, but you would expect that, mainly because that initial hit of torque, right? But I got to say, when the 600's on song and she's doing her thing, it is a riot of a bike to ride. Plus, I don't know, it's just this, it's a Gixxer middleweight. So of course it's going to be a lot of fun to ride. Skids is in. Oh, there you are. Didn't see you there. Sub B, what's up, man? Yeah, we're all freezing to death over here. It's going to get down to, 26, I think, down here. Yeah, it's going to flirt with 20s, and then it's going to go right back up to being above freezing at like noon or 11 or 10 or whatever tomorrow. And then it's going to get cold again, and then it's going to get back to being warm, and then it's supposed to basically just stay where it's supposed to be for this time of year. Chopped liver, dude. I'm hungry too. I have been eating like a freaking horse lately. Been doing a ton of cardio, and so I'm always freaking hungry. Anyway, just basically giving you guys an update tonight. I did a long live last night and was going over basically kind of the same things that I'm talking about tonight. Just trying to put fingers and hands and toes on everything on this bike to make sure that once it really does start to get leaned on, there's not going to be any surprises. I will say this though, and I think I mentioned this in the video that I guess I'm going to be posting tomorrow morning, but it's funny because every one of these GSXR middleweights, one of the key takeaways is initially just how not great the brakes are on these bikes when you first start to push the pace a little bit. And it's funny because all you have to do is, it feels like you're bedding in the brakes again, right? So let me walk you through this. The blue bike, that bike had never been ridden hard ever, ever, ever in its life, mainly because it was a demo bike, but it was a parade bike at that. So it was never really, like, nobody ever really ran it hard. Nobody ever really bed the brakes in. And so the first time I actually rode that bike, it was grab a handful of brakes, wait for the brakes to figure out that they need to start stopping things, and then do it again, do it again. And finally it beds the brakes in and they fit and they work really well. The gray bike was the exact same thing. The first time I rode it, it was brakes. Are there brakes on this bike? Get off of it, go through a procedure of getting it like to 30, 40 miles an hour, give it brakes. 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, give it brakes. 60 to 80 miles an hour, give it brakes a couple of times in that window, and then start really leaning on it from, say, 100 to 110 miles an hour and heating those brakes up and getting those brake pads to bed in properly. You would think that a 13-year-old GSXR 600 would have bedded in brakes like you wouldn't believe. Nope. So I get on the bike, same thing, run it up, hit the brakes, where are the brakes? And so I went through the entire procedure again with this one. So it just goes to show it probably needs new brake pads, which is probably going to happen this summer. Skid saying going to be a balmy 21 up there in North Texas. Yeah, that's like crazy cold for us down here. And a lot of guys go, here's the other thing. Guys from Northeast go, well, that's nothing. We're at, it's 7 degrees here. Yeah, that's where you live. And that's how your houses are built. Down here, houses ain't built for that kind of weather. So yeah, it's a little bit different. Versa brake pads are nice, DM. Yes. DM's asking, what's the idea for this 600 track bike? Man, I don't know. Here's the thing. I would actually really like to start doing track days again. And there's really not a track convenient to Houston outside of Motorsports Ranch. So if I do decide to start doing track days, it'll probably get started with the 600, and it'll just be something casual. It'll be something for me to go out, goof off, play. I'm not going to be taking it too seriously. It's not that I don't want to be competitive. I do. And of course, once the gear goes on and the lid gets locked in, and I'm on track, it might be a little bit different story then. But right now, the way I'm seeing it is if I do end up doing that, I just want to get out there and goof off and have fun. And I want to be able to do it on a bike that is not going to be consuming consumables at the rate that the 1000 would. And not to mention, I just really don't have a venue locally convenient for me, especially to work with my schedule, that I could really have fun with that 1000. It's not gonna bode that well. But for the 600 or the 750s, yeah, I could absolutely get out there and rip it with those bikes with a smaller track, maybe a little bit more technical. A track that's really not in as great a shape as, say, COTA would be up in Austin. And in that respect, it would just be a lot of fun to just get out there and have fun again. So that may be what ends up happening with the 600. It won't be a dedicated track bike the same way that the rest of the fleet's not really dedicated for anything other than street, but I will want to probably get it out there. And I'm saying all of that, it'll probably end up being the blue bike that I take out there. But that being said, the 600 is kind of in the radar for that too. Bruce is asking, is it worth buying demo bikes? I thought they rode hard or were rode harder than normal, like rental cars. Not really. So the blue bike was a little bit different story. It was a demo bike, but it was owned by Suzuki corporate. And it was the bike that you would hop onto and ride whenever they would do their demo days. And those are basically just parade laps. You're not really able to get into the bikes that hard. And the only time you really can is just in kind of short bursts. It's not like you're even getting the thing over 100 miles an hour. So ever. In fact, you might not even get it over 70. So my bike, it just kind of, that's the life that it lived for, like, what was it, like 1,300 miles or however many miles were on it. And it made it through its its tour of duty, so to speak. And when it came up for grabs, those bikes you can get for cheap. And I did. I mean, I got off a sticker. It's a super big discount. And so I fetched it up, grabbed it. And I mean, it's a deal that you honestly can't say no to, especially if it's a bike that you're going to be riding quite a bit. So in that respect, yeah, it's a good idea. The demo bikes out of the dealership, listen, they're all going to come with a factory warranty. And let me just put it to you like this. A lot of folks really do lean a lot on the break-in procedure and breaking in an engine and all of that. Here's the thing. If the bike is run, just riding it, just cruising around, if you ride that bike through the course of a couple of tanks of gas, with about 5 or 8 good heat cycles through it, that's about as broken in as that engine is going to get before you're going to, before the tail end of its final machining of itself into place. You've got about 98% of that done in that amount of time. Make no mistake, these bikes are, you do want to follow your owner's manual and all of that. But the reality is that, again, after, like I say, a couple of tanks of gas, you're going to have 1, 2, maybe 3 heat soaks per tank. You're going to be good, and you're going to be varying the load on that bike anyway. That's really what you want to do. A lot of times, and this is the funny thing with like that and break-in procedures and all of that, if you're on the engine building side of things, the last thing you want is for an engine to be softly broken in, because it will never experience the full thermal expansion and true heat cycles until later on. You're not doing the engine any favors. And on the aviation side, believe it or not, those engines, they're all run in at a wide open throttle. And there are some protocols that will say if you don't have a certain density altitude, which is to say, you're in Denver and you're trying to break in one of the Lycomings, the naturally aspirated engines, if you're not at, I want to say it's below 2,000 or 3,000 feet density altitude, that engine won't break in properly. You break them in firewalled. And so, the whole break-in procedure thing is a little bit overblown. And so is, the demo thing. Look, the engines are made to run, so don't worry about a demo bike. They're usually better running. And matter of fact, every bike that I've ever, this is the thing, talking about demo bikes or break-in procedures, things like that. I am not kidding when I tell you guys this. Every time, and I learned this early on, anytime that there was a piece of machinery, anytime there was a bike, a car, anything like that was broken in really easily, softly, right? Just babied it. This happens a lot with boat engines too, versus you just get the thing, get the keys fired up, let's get after it. Let it warm up, obviously. I mean, there are rules to this game, but let the thing warm up, let it get it to temperature, and just however you're going to use that piece of machinery, drive it like that, run it like that, use it like that. Every single freaking time, and this has never failed yet. It is yet to fail in the last 35 years of my life. If the babied equipment, the babied boat, the babied car, the baby bike, whatever, that is the one that always broke down first. It never did. I couldn't understand it, but anytime I was really soft on something early on, it's almost like it was destined to fail. Whereas the other stuff, you just beat the crap out of it. It ran the best, got the best gas mileage, made the most power, all of that. Never could understand that. Never, ever could understand that. So anyway, break it in like you're going to use it. And the other thing, break it in like you're going to use it and get an early oil change and then get a second early oil change. All of my stuff gets an oil change, bikes, cars, whatever, 500 miles, and then at either 1,000 or 1,500, and then at its first normal increment of oil changes. And I just stick to that. Let's see. Skid's asking, which Bell helmet have you worn most recently? I'm interested in the Raystar Flex. I've got my Bullet. I think it was the Raystar. One of them I did a review on, and it was really loud. There was a buffeting on in the right ear of this thing that I had to return the helmet, and I liked it too, but it fit well, but it was just crazy loud. But I use my Bullet all the time when I'm on the Bonneville. Bruce saying also it's -2, feels like -13. Ooh, no, thank you. You can say take the pads from the blue bike and get centered pads. I don't know. I'll probably just get something. I don't know, like DM saying, get some verses for it and call it good. Carl's saying, regarding break-in, I follow fairly closely to the manufacturer's recommendations, but I do insist on an oil change before before redlining the vehicle. That's always a good idea. One of the things that I like to do is it's going to get an oil change at about 500 miles either way. But manufacturer's recommendations, it's kind of funny because there was a bunch of folks at one point. I remember this like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. Time flies. But anyway, they were arguing break-in, like, oh, you've got to, I remember this like it was yesterday because it was on one of the forum posts. And I said, dude, again, same speech. Every time I've broken something in per the manufacturer's recommendations, nothing has gone well for it. Perfect example of that, Foxy. That thing's got a 351 in it, and that engine, I don't think has ever broken in. It's just kind of funny. It still acts like a new engine, even though that engine, it's years and years old, only has about maybe 15,000 miles on it at the most. But it still, you consumes oil like a brand new engine. It's kind of funny. It's always been run on synthetic. And my thing was, look, I run dyno oil for the first 2 oil changes because it's cheap. It's not because it does something magical to the inside of the engine. I do it because it's cheap. I know that it's going to be, drained pretty soon. And you got to remember that the oil that the bikes come with is all dyno oil from the dealership when they are prepping the bike for sale. So your first oil that's in it is dyno. The first oil change at 500 is dyno. And then the second oil change that it gets that one's usually going to be the synthetic, like any kind of a platinum, any kind of the best oil you can get, like the Motul, any of that. That's when that goes into the bike. But yeah, that's kind of the way I've always done it. But the funny thing is these guys were saying, well, if you use this kind of oil or that kind of oil and this, that, or whatever, and best recommendation is to do whatever the manufacturer tells you to do, but make sure that you are loading that engine up. Don't necessarily have to spin it to the moon. Shouldn't be doing that all the time anyway, right? Am I right? I'm not right. Spin that thing to the moon. Drive it like you stole it. As long as, you maintain it after your break-in period. Let me check in with you guys. Oh, DM saying, careful in the cold weather. Yeah, for sure. It'll suck the heat right out of the tires. So that is no joke. We're going to have some pretty decent weather, I think, on Wednesday. But yeah, it will definitely suck all the heat out of the tires. And the funny thing is that I mentioned this in the live show yesterday. So the 600s, I don't know what it is. It's just luck of the draw, but the 600s right now are ruling the roost as far as distance goes on rolling burnouts. And so when I had first done a real quick, just getting to know your ride with this bike at the dealership, I didn't ride it that long or that far. It had a really old set of GPR 300s on the back of it that were about as hard as this plastic table that this computer's sitting on. So I buzzed it up, did the block around to the backside of the Harley Davidson dealership, and I just roll into the throttle on that asphalt, and it starts lighting the rear tire up. So I went first gear, grabbed second gear. It was still skating around. I just grabbed third and pinned it. And it just, And the only reason why I got out of the throttle is because there's this big bump in the road there. So I rolled out of it and I'm get off and take off. Well, it's got the new set of the Bridgestone S22s on it, and they were never scrubbed in. And so pull the bike out, or pull the bike off the trailer, fire it up, and then grab the gear, throw it on, and take it for a real quick spin around the block. And just did the same thing. And the road outside is like a hard pack asphalt, so it's kind of slippery when it's, you know, a little bit cool outside, and a brand new rear tire on it. And I just started fanning it through the gears, did the same thing. So anyway, 600s for the win on rolling burnout so far. But yeah, it's because of cold tires or old tires. DM's loving the Motul. I'm a big fan of Motul. Matter of fact, got a sweet run of 7,100 right and back over here. And I need to get another gallon of it because this bike is up for an oil change here pretty soon. It'll be the next on the list of things I got to get done with this thing. Oh, BA's asking, what is the first sport bike you ever bought? Your make and model. 2004 Honda RC51 SP2 was my first actual sport bike that I spent my own money on. Now, that being said, I spent a lot of miles on a 1988 or 89 Hurricane 600 in college that belonged to a buddy of mine. And he had bought it, wasn't a huge fan of the bike, I guess. I was, and he said, look, you want to ride it, you ride it whenever you want. And so I rode that bike every day that it was pretty. Damn, let me think about this for a minute. I rode that thing for about a year and a half. So anyway, yeah, that was a lot of fun. But the very first bike that I ever purchased on my own was the RC51. Oh, BA said he got his buddy had an 04 Hayden. Mine was just an SP2. Wasn't a Hayden. I wanted a Hayden and couldn't find one. What's kind of funny though, so this is how broke I was. So I got that RC51, and this is at a point in time where RC51s were, I'll put it to you like this. The leader bikes were just coming into their own at this point, and 1000cc twins, although they're a lot of fun to ride, and they really are. I'd love to get another RC51. But it's a different riding experience. And this bike, it was in New York State. The guy it was an insurance claim bike. The guy had dropped it, like literally dropped it in his garage or something. And it had a broken, God, I got to think about this for a minute. It had a broken clutch lever. What did it have? It had a broken clutch lever and a couple of dumb little goofy things that were wrong with it. The insurance company, whatever, totaled it. This thing went up for auction on eBay, of all things. And nobody wanted it. And I got it for like $2,800. And it was like, I couldn't believe it. It was $2,800 plus. Okay, I had to ship it, right? And so I contact the seller, really cool guy. And this is, I guess, one of the things that they did. And he goes, okay, well, I'm going to get you in contact with my shipping guy. We'll get the bike set up, and when the shipper guy gets here, it'll be crated and it'll get sent to you. I was like, all right, cool. So I call up the shipping company, and it's a piano moving company. And I'm like, I think the company's called Piano Movers. And the guy goes, yeah. He goes, I know the guy. He said, which bike did you get? And I explained to him which bike it was. He was, okay, cool. Let me call him up. We'll get it all squared away. I gave him the information. He said, don't worry about payment. You pay when we deliver. I said, okay, cool. Keep in mind, he's coming from freaking New York State. So the day comes and the driver guy calls me up and he goes, hey, where are you at? And I said, there's a truck stop that's going to be real convenient for you to go to. We'll just meet you at the truck stop. He said, okay, cool. I get there and the bike is literally in a crate, like you would crate up a piano. And they built the crate kind of around the bike. It looked like they had like a system that they used and then they just put things around it. Anyway, it was pretty trick. The guy gets in there, opens the thing up, pulls the bike out. Everything's cool, hands me the keys. I fill out some paperwork, runs my card. All the paperwork's there ready to go, all stuck to the bike. And then they had mailed me all of the legalese, like the title and all this other stuff to the bike. They already had that. It's really cool. And I get the bike, click the key on, fire it up, fires right up, and we rode it straight home, my dad and I. So, and then from there, we started, I already had all the parts ready to go. We put it all back together and then immediately started hauling ass, went to, drug it over to a Starbucks over off Westheimer, and then immediately did a 610 run with my dad on this RC51 that, wasn't really in my possession more than about, I don't know, maybe 20 hours. And we're already, me and my dad just bombing on 610. So very cool bike. Oh, Bruce saying 15 watching, only 6 likes. Yeah, smash that like button. She's saying RC51, definitely a bucket list bike. It really is. Oh, BA saying, oh, he's got a 2K SP1. Nice. Saying, where'd it go? You should have kept it. I had, when I got to Northern California, I just wanted something different. And as it turned out, my GSXR 750 came up for grabs. And I was, I made an offer on the 750. They gave me quite a bit of money for the RC51. So I basically flipped the RC51 and got a GSXR 750 out of it. But I was on my RC51 for kind of a hot minute. Mickey's asking, 610 loop? Yes, 610 loop. That's back when the 610 loop, there wasn't hardly any traffic. But that's also back in the day when like a 30-minute run on 610 was fast. And so if you could average, I think if you could average 100 miles an hour, I might be wrong about this. If you could average 100 miles an hour, I think that it was a 27-minute run or something like that. I can't remember. We didn't ever time it. We would just start out at Starbucks, buzz around, and then head back over to Starbucks. Oh, DM saying, check out the 2003 MotoGP movie, Faster. It's excellent. I need to check that out. I've heard about that. I think that's the one I heard about. BA saying the gear-driven cam sounds so good. Yes. Mickey's asking, what's my time? We never really did time it. I know that there was a dude that ran... I mean, I know for a fact I could cover that. Well, whatever the average of 100 miles an hour was, I covered that one. That was just a normal pace though. So I want to say it was maybe 27 minutes. It wasn't 30. Maybe it was 23 minutes. Shit, it's been way too long. And that was, again, that was when you could run that pace and it was wide open back then. At night, we would usually make the hit at about midnight. No, I never did do it for a time. There's no real reason at that point to just go blasting and go, okay, here we go. Because I was never going to be able to compete with the guys that were really good. And back then it was my first bike. I mean, I didn't, not a good idea to go hit a full 610 on a RC51 when you've got all of, just a couple of years worth of honest to goodness street bike riding. But I know for a fact I've buzzed it with an average speed of over 100 miles an hour on probably 15 or 20 times. But nothing like what you'll see nowadays. I mean, some of these guys are averaging, 18 to 20 minutes flat on a 610 run, which is bananas. I'll put it to you like this: 25 minutes is real tough to do, especially considering traffic. So if you make the hit and you hit it at like 3 o'clock in the morning, you could probably cover, I could probably cover a 20, I'd say a 25. I'd say I could probably cover a 25 on the 1,000, but I wouldn't want to push it much harder than that. Gaptus is in. What's up, man? How are we doing on time? Looks like we're doing good. But yeah, back in the day, that was a big deal. What's funny is that now it's a lot of the guys they've morphed everything into like roll racing is really more what the guys are doing now. Which it almost makes sense because doing 610 runs, the problem with doing a 610 run is, again, is traffic. It's cars. You cannot predict what is going to happen. You never know what's up. And you're in an urban environment, which means you've got more law enforcement, and there's just too much that too many things can go wrong at any one given time. And with the construction and all that kind of stuff, it makes it not near as much fun as what it used to be back in the day when you're just out there riding your bike and not really trying to be competitive with it, but still wanting to have fun and get out there and haul ass. But what a lot of the guys do now is they just go out in the middle of nowhere and they've got all kinds of different, leader bikes, but all bikes get involved. You got 600 class, 750 class, leader class bikes, and they just all get out there, strap the bikes down, get them set up for top end runs, and just line them up and just hit it, and those are the guys that you'll see, they'll GPS out, somewhere around between, it depends on the bike and the rider and what they're comfortable with and how the bike is set up, because some bikes get a little bit sketchy at some of these higher speeds. Ask me how I know. But, you figure minimum speed you're going to go is 170. That's going to be to the top of fifth gear in pretty much any leader bike. And that's an easy speed to get to, provided that everything is going fine and your suspension is set up and all of that. Once you strap the bike down, you don't even realize how fast you're going. Everything is very smooth and clean with a bike that's prepped for that kind of riding. It's once you get into sixth gear, that's where things kind of get weird, because you're still at an acceleration rate that's pretty incredible, but you're looking at running out, somewhere between usually 185 and 190 is where guys will start to roll out of it. So if you see 190, like a legit 190 GPS run, those guys are typically prepped and set up for that kind of racing. It's really hard to do that on bikes unless you have one of the newer style bikes that are a bit better at controlling its attitude at high RPM, high load, high speed. Again, these leader bikes are kind of funny because it's like riding a 200 horsepower unicycle. Some of them, they get a little bit flighty up in that area. It's what I've been doing with my 1,000, was trying to take some of that tendency away from that bike. Bruce is saying, my goal is to go from 0 to 60 as quick as possible without lifting the front. My dumbass lifted the front wheel on my 844-pound Kawasaki Vaquero racing my son in his truck. Nice. Bruce saying, I don't need top speed. Yeah, it's funny. A lot of folks ask about top speed, though, on the channel. And one of the weirder things is that a lot of folks have asked, well, how much top end do you give up with a 600 versus a 750? Like, I don't know. It depends on how often you're above 160 miles an hour, as if you're giving up anything for that matter, which is, to say, how often do you really run the bike that high up in the speed range, right? But I can tell you this little 600 behind me, I'd say running little 600, and it's stock. That's the other thing. And I'm kind of curious what I can really how long I can keep this bike more or less in the configuration that it's in, outside of putting mirror block offs on it, a different windscreen, and a couple of other things like that. But just how long can I really keep this bike stock before it gets a tune and full exhaust? I don't know. But the thing is with me, the 600 is so good the way that it is, and you're not gaining a ton of power, although it is percentage wise still a bigger percentage than you might think. You know, you're picking up about 10% once you go, you know, full exhaust and a tune. But it's not, but it's close to a stock GSXR 750 once you get it to that point. And so it's like, well, should I do it? Because I don't know. I like that it's more aggressively geared. And here's the other thing about Gixxers, that this is a Gixxer cheat code, by the way. Gixxers, the middleweights, are not very restricted from the factory. This is something that a lot of folks tend to forget. And it's one of the reasons why when you put a tune and exhaust on these bikes, they don't pick up a huge number. You'll still go from, like, say 104 horsepower to 112, right? So that's a solid 8 horsepower, which in this game is quite a bit. That's about 6 or 7%. But it's not this huge jump that you get, like with 1,000, where you'll go from 165 to 185, right? Or even the 750, where you'll go from, say, 120 to 135. That's a big jump. You're just not going to get that big of a jump with the 600 plus, because it's not as far restricted as the rest of the bikes in the class. It just picks up a little bit of power up top. And it's like, man, does it really even need it? It doesn't feel like it lays over. Matter of fact, it feels eerily similar to a certain blue GSXR 750 with the way that it puts down power. It just never it never lays over. So anyway, plus it's got really smooth throttle mapping, which reminds me, the tune that's on the 750, I may be sending that ECU over to More Mafia, mainly because of the throttle mapping is so good on the gray bike. I kind of want that for that blue bike. So it may end up getting a retune just for that later on this year. John's asking if I'll be doing any car content again. Only if it's something that's interesting, man. Look, here's the thing. There's nothing on the horizon right now for me to get overly excited about. There's nothing from Dodge that I'm all too worked up over. Mustang is still Mustang. You know, you've got the Dark Horse SC, which is a car that nobody asked for, that nobody wants. It's another DCT. This is, I can't believe Ford screwed this up. I mean, this is literally like screwing up a ham sandwich. The big complaint about the big complaint about the GT500 was that it had the DCT transmission. I almost said Cobra. What people wanted was, like the Cobra, they wanted a manual transmission and or an automatic transmission, and make it a normal car, please and thank you. But they didn't. They doubled down on that DCT, and that is not what muscle car guys are looking for. So anyway, plus it's way too expensive, and I can't afford one, and I'm not even going to try to get in the middle of that. But at least it's a cool hot rod, and I guess I could talk about it, and I guess I just did, and that's about as much as I'm going to talk about it, because there's nothing else really to compare it to. What, a Corvette that makes a Brazilian horsepower that nobody can afford? I mean, it's its own brand at this point, so I'm not even interested in it on any power level, on any level whatsoever. It's just, it's a boring car to me, because at this stage of the game, it's power by committee. What I mean by that is, it's every nanny is going to be in full employment, and it doesn't really evoke any kind of real soul. It's a theme park ride, basically, that you can take to the grocery store. Outside of that, I mean, listen, every time I've posted up any content on, like, me going darn near 12s in my pickup truck, you know, Pearl, my Ram 1500 with the stock standard output Hurricane. Yeah, nobody really cared about that. Nobody really cared at all about, you know, any of the Fox body content that I was putting out. So I went ahead and chopped that off. But I guess the real kicker for me, and this is where my my want and desire for doing car content just absolutely took a dump. Do you guys remember? And I was doing ride-alongs, a lot of ride-alongs, drag strip stuff, trying to get guys excited about, you know, we're going to break the record again, and we break the record. We're going to break the record again. So when I set the record for stock boost 93 octane with the Hellcat. And I mean, it was taking me a ton. I mean, it was me against Jim Mopar in Canada. He's got the air. I feel like, you know, I had a lot going for me too, though. I had a lot of assets that I was employing at the time with just my background in tuning and getting this car sorted out. He had some good guys that on his team, and I had me. And so when I ran the 1005 and I solidified and I drug that record back to the United States, and it's all on video. It's a ride along video. And I'm like, yeah, and new. And it was me and Orange Crush, and he ran a hell of a strong number 2. And that video, that ride along video does not have 900 views. Okay. You would think that if it's a Mopar channel and you've got somebody that is flying this Mopar flag so hard, and I'm driving this narrative and I'm doing all of this content, plus all of this other stuff that I was doing, helping folks out, you would have thought that maybe, I don't know, something would have come from that. And nobody watched the video, statistically speaking. And I just, after that, I just went, it's not that my love for that stuff went away, but it dawned on me pretty quickly that if I keep doing content like that, my channel is going to go nowhere. And I was already kind of getting bored with it anyway. So, you know, I had some folks, you know, you always get the hate and stuff like that. But, you know, it's one of those funny things where, you know, it's like, oh, you know, you're cheating, or somebody said I was running race gas. One guy said I was on E. Another guy said that I was, you know, hitting it with a 50 shot or something. That's why I did that one video too, where I go, look, you want to do a forensic on my car, I'll walk you through it. And I actually did that. I thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, that's really why I got away from it. And, you know, it just got to a point where none of the content that I was putting out really landed with audiences, and guys wanted to hear more about what somebody thought was coming down the pipeline. And it turned into a thing where, you know, it was more about gossip channels than it was about me, that was trying to teach folks on how to actually go fast. And speaking of that part, the other reason why I don't really do car content anymore is because I was also getting hit up at the time for a ton of peer reviews on tuning. And guys hit me up asking me to take a look at their tune. I'm going to a race. Can you help me out with this or that or whatever? And so I would, and then, you know, nothing, hardly even a thanks usually. So I cut that off at the knees pretty quickly. So I will never do a peer review for anybody's tuning again. I don't care who it is or what they want. The other thing I won't ever do is put a cam together for anybody, or really any of that stuff that I was doing. And mainly because, look, the way I see it, if you've got one of those cars, you can pay somebody to get it perfected. I mean, I was winning races for people with my tunes, and you know, hardly even a mention about who helped them to get where they were. You know how shitty that is. So I was like, fuck this, man. If this is who I'm going to be doing all this helping for, I don't even get a thanks or a mention, forget it. And if I do end up getting back into it, it'll just be something I do on the side, and I'll just have fun with it. Let's see. Bruce asking or saying it would be nice to hit 120 on general principle, but if I die without hitting 150 on the ground, I'll be all right. And I hit 150 every time I ride a bike. DM's asking, with 2 GSXR 750s, is one getting the 792 kit? Probably not. Mainly because I just really like the GSXR 750, the way that it sits. And I don't know that it would, I'll put it to you like this. I would consider it, but I would have to not have a GSXR 1000 to do it, because I'd have to free up some funds to do that. BA's asking, have I spent any time on a 21 through 25 ZX10? Curious if you think it lacks good mid-range power. Well, no, I haven't, but I do know how that bike does put down power. Of the leader bikes that I've ridden, it's the only one that I haven't spent any time on. The R1 and the GSX-R 1000 are very similar in terms of how they put down power, with the R1 just being a lot smoother engine. The Honda is a little bit down on power, but it's also the smallest of the bikes, and it's one of my favorite bikes I've ever ridden. The CBR 1000 Double R. The reason why I haven't really had a chance to mess with the ZX10 is that we don't ever get any of those at the dealership. And the other thing is that I don't really fit on that bike. It's a weird fit for me. And so just from an ergonomic point of view, I'm not sold on the idea of even, I mean, I'm not going to say I would never ride one. I would, but initial fit on that bike is not very good with me, ergonomics anyway. But that's a reason why there's an ass for every seat, a seat for every ass. Scholar is saying the R1 should be going to a V4 configuration in the coming years. That will be cool. Since they went to a V4 in MotoGP, should trickle down to some masses. We'll see. That's what they're talking about, and that's kind of the rumor. And since Yamaha can't seem to figure out a way to build motorcycles right now at any volume level, they need to do something for sure. Maybe different, or at least start making R1s. The local dealerships around here, R9s are hard to get a hold of, much less R1s. Most of the allocations are only one or two of those bikes. Southern saying, I'm here from the Mopar content. Cool. Good to have you still here. I appreciate it. Southern saying, still loving my 1320 and still hitting the track. I love it. Another thing is when we lost the track down here, that was kind of like we're done. For me, I should have bought a 1320. There's nothing more boring than having a Hellcat when you really don't have a venue to exercise it, because then it's just a car and you're just, the view out of the windscreen. It's not a motorcycle. The view out of the windshield is no different than any other car you're going to be driving from here to there in. Bruce saying, so my fiance/wife in June is not hyped about me getting a sporty bike. You have kind of convinced me to go with a Suzuki 750 naked or fared. I'm also looking at a Z900 or MT-09. Any thoughts? Z900 is a hell of a good bike. So is the MT-09. If you're not really banging on the bike and you like a good torque hit, always go MT-09. So the XSR 900 is still one of my favorite bikes. It won, for me anyway, it won Sport Naked of 2025. And it's because it is just such an accessible power that it makes. I mean, it's just a twist of the throttle, and that bike is putting down, a good chunk of its peak power pretty much the whole time you're in the throttle, right? So it's probably the first one that I would suggest, and maybe then the Z900. Z900 is no joke. Z900 is a fast bike. Bruce saying, not looking at the SC or the SP. Either one of the bikes are good. Mickey saying, asking, what's the 793 kit? So what it is there is a stroker kit for the GSX-R 750 that gets it to just shy of 800 cc's. And it's pretty serious. I'll put it to you like this. It's not leader class bike power, but it's a lot closer. You're looking at somewhere around 155 to 160 horsepower to the rear tire. And that's, I mean, it really does turn that GSX-R 750 into a pretty serious machine. Also, considering that it's a smaller bike and it's light already to begin with, it's a bad little bitch once you get to that level with the 750s. BA saying RIP for CP4. Man, I'm telling you, the CP4 architecture is really good. And I would hate to see Yamaha do away with it. But I mean, they're not. Here's the problem with Yamaha, man. I really want an R1 and I've just got sour grapes, dude. I can't seem to make it happen no matter what. So, but I love me some R1, man. Of the leader bikes, full disclosure, I think the R1's my favorite. But I say that, but then the Gixxer Thou is also my favorite. So I don't know, man. I love them both. BA saying MT09 all the way. MT10's even better. Ooh, MT10. MT10 is a glorious sounding machine. Love it. All right, I think I got all of y'all in. So I am going to get back to working on this thing back over here. Wanted to touch base with you guys tonight, though. Again, can't wait to get this bike on the road. It's been way too long for me. I should have had a 600 earlier on. I really regret that very first white GSXR 600 that I did the ride and review on. Damn, that was a fun bike to ride. And that bike ended up selling. God, man, it was only like a week or two after I put that video out. And I was thinking about it. There was another couple of there was a couple of GSXR 600s that were there before I got my GSXR 1000. And there was a CBR 600 that's still there that I really was considering picking up. But I was thinking, no, man, I really want a GSXR. They fit me better. It's more comfortable for me. The CBR that I did the ride and review, by the way, it's still at the dealership for sale. That bike is a stout CBR 600. It is, I forget who put the tune on it. I think it's got a full Yoshi on it. I mean, it's a bad little, CBR 600s are good in general, but this one's a pretty badass version of them. In fact, DM was asking if I was going to do track days with the GSXR 600. What I would kind of like to do, not that I can't buy another bike right now, but that CBR 600 kind of calling my name as a throwdown track bike. But again, I'd be faster on my GSXR anyway, but it would just be a very fun trip down memory lane. Oh, the other bike and I haven't mentioned this yet, another bike that I spent a ton of time on back in the day was the CBR 600 F4i. Another buddy of mine had one of those. He was kind of in the same boat. He ended up getting a ZX9, and but he didn't trade in the F4. And I rode that bike. I think I must have put about 5,000 miles on that bike, if not more. So really like the F4i. Easy bike to do wheelies on, by the way. That's the sound of the police. What was that? BA saying, we all got the same problem. They're all badass. They are all fun. And that's the thing. I get a chance to ride all of them. And, it's kind of funny. I don't have, this is a stupid statement, and I'm full of shit even saying these words aren't going to make any sense coming out of my mouth. I don't have a favorite. I mean, it's like, Gixxer Garage back here. I do have a favorite, but they're all really good. I just happen to be more familiar with the GSXR platform, but I get a chance to ride everything. And so I really don't have a bias. And what's funny too, is because I do ride so many different bikes, there's times where bikes will surprise me. And I'm just like, wow, this is awesome. Like the K1600 or the Concourse or the MT09 or the XSR 900. There's other bikes too that'll surprise me that you wouldn't think that would. The Royal Enfield, the Continental GT, that's one that I really like, that I literally was heading back to the dealership to buy when they sold it. There's the V-Strom is another bike that I really loved. And, it's just kind of one of those things where, I get a chance to ride so many that I have such an appreciation for all the different types of bikes that are out there. But I don't really have, I don't have a specific, brand that I know Suzuki, I get it, but I don't have a, if Honda, okay. And I'd said this before, you got all the parts to do it. If Honda would make the CBR 750, if Yamaha, oh, this is one, if Yamaha would make a CP4 version of a real R7, yeah. The reason why I love the Gixxers so much is because they retain all, hold on. Yes, I even wear the shirt because they retain the spirit of this bike so much. And so, you know, if those other manufacturers would make bikes that resonate with me, I would be all about those manufacturers, I guess. Bruce saying, whoop, whoop. That's right. DM saying, I'm putting myself out there a bit, but I don't like Hondas on track. They are expensive and there are not a lot of factory support or aftermarket. That is true. Back in the day, the only reason why I gravitate to Hondas a little bit is because of just how much we used to beat the crap out of F4Is. So it would just be, you know, if you can find one super cheap, they're usually bomb proof, but just not the fastest thing around the track normally. There are easier bikes to get around track, but the thing about the Hondas is that I don't think you ever run into any problems, but that's also Suzuki middleweight territory also. I'm saying, unless it's on the track, big red itself, then it's amazing for sure. BA saying, I can get with that new KTM RC990 and my eyes bug out looking at it. Man, I tell you what, if you've seen one in person, they're, I like, it's an interesting looking bike. The only thing that again, it's a bike that it's got really wide handlebars and it sits, I'll put it to you like this. If you've ever sat on a CF Moto 675 SS, if you were to put a 675 SS and an RCR 990 right next to each other, they're very, 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 very similar. Excruciatingly similar, if I'm being honest. DM saying 99 R7, one of my all-time favorites. Yes. It's not like they don't know how to make them, DM. They made them back in the day, some of the baddest ass bikes. And I don't know what it is. I was always so gravitationally drawn to the middleweight or the 750cc class of bikes, whatever reason. But I'm here to tell you, the funny thing about it is that Yamaha, if any manufacturer would do it, I would think that maybe Kawasaki, you know, they have the ZX7, but I don't know that I would be as interested in that. I really would want the Yamaha to do this. They've got one of the best chassis with the R9. You know, if you can stick the CP3 in there, can't you figure out a way to get just do it, man. It's got to be that easy, right? DM saying that R7 had a frame and swing arm in a class of its own. I mean, everybody that I ever heard of that rode that bike loved it. And it just sucks that we don't have that kind of bike to enjoy nowadays. It just, and I get, you know, emissions and all this other stuff. Look, I understand all that, whatever with all that for me though, because I can still buy a GSXR 750 today, and I can still buy a GSXR 600 that is making the same kind of power that the 750s did back in the 750s heyday. Doesn't quite make the torque, but it makes the horsepower. And it's one of those things where you just go, damn, man. I mean, I've got to say that if they would just bring something like that bike back, it would almost be the antidote to all of these guys that are constantly bitching about leader bikes being way too powerful because they're all over 200 horsepower or whatever. Okay. Well, if you want something that screams, that hauls ass, that does everything beautifully well, GSXR 750 or a real R7, and you know, maybe they need to go to 800 cc's. You got 600, 800, 1000. 800 is right in the middle. Would it be easier to get that bike to pass Euro 5? I don't know. But anyway, you see me working here, right? There's got to be a way to shut down the argument against the 1000cc bikes. And if somebody wants a 1000cc bike, they're going to buy a 1000cc bike. But if you got a problem with a GSXR 750 power level, I mean, you're in a class of your own, because everybody loves that 150. You know, once you pipe and tune them, right? The 150 at the flywheel, say 135 at the rear tire. That's what people are looking for. And that's what they always seem to be so hyped up over when it comes to, talking about when you're looking at journos and what they're more interested in. Bruce is saying, my niece got a 636 as her first bike this past year. She's 8 years younger than me and got my dream bike. I hear you. DM saying, yeah, we need a reset on Hypersports for sure. And DM saying a lot of smog laws will be obsolete soon. Exactly. So that's why I'm saying, man, look, and even look, here's the thing. And I've been saying this for a while, even about the GSXR middleweights, at least give them an option for the doodads and gadgets that people want. I don't need them. I really don't. In fact, I kind of run from them a little bit now that I'm spending so much time with these middleweights. I'm not going to say I'm repulsed by a quick shifter, but I don't find it useful for me, except when I'm on the leader bike, when I'm on my 1000, I kind of feel like it helps the situation along when I'm doing, really hauling ass with that bike. But man, I got to tell you, nothing beats fanning through the gears on one of these middleweights. And I mean, if you need a quick shifter, want a quick shifter, cool. That technology exists and that should be easy to employ. If you want a TFT screen, even better, cool. We got a lot of that, but at least make them optional. If you want to give them a facelift, that's cool too, I guess. I don't have a problem with the more organic look of the older bikes, but I get that the edgy thing is a thing. And so do that, whatever, that's fine. But do us all a favor. And other manufacturers, there's reasons why Suzuki literally sells every one of the 600s and 750s that they make. All of them. There are rarely, if ever, any leftovers. Doesn't work like that. So there's something to the formula. But with that, guys, I do have to get back to it. So, but DM, again, thank you so very much for the support on the channel. Hit me up with a super thanks. And so for that, man, I do very much appreciate that. Goes a long way. Listen, guys, get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. DM saying Yamaha are too concerned with electronic kit. You know what's funny? Here's the thing. What drives me nuts about the R9, I talk about the winglets. What drove me nuts about the R9 is that what it could have been. How the hell do you put a bike together that looks like that doesn't have ram air? How do you put a bike like that together that looks like that and doesn't have 130 to 140 horsepower at least on tap? You don't even have to put it to the rear tire. Just give it to me with about 130 to 135 horsepower. I don't think that's asking too much. And I think that, and I'll be honest with you, I think that there's a lot of folks that are holding out on buying an R9 because of all the reviews that have come back where people are kind of shitting on that bike a little bit because it is what it is, right? The MT-09. But I think there's a lot of folks that when they bought it, they ended up moving away from it because it wasn't quite the bike they thought it was going to be. But I have a feeling at some point, Yamaha is going to get serious with that bike, do something with that CP3 architecture and come out with something really good, or just make a CP4 that's little. How about that? Give me a 750 or 850 and I'll just be the first one in line to buy it. But with that, guys, thank y'all so very much. I truly appreciate y'all hanging out with me. Get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. But with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Stay warm out there. We'll catch y'all later.